Thanks for your help. This should take care of any monsters. Look, I'm in a bit of a hurry. Just wait there to be rescued. If we're lucky, we'll see each other soon. Until then.
It's no secret that I like to talk about games that are gimmicky, or unique, or just innovative in some kind of way on this channel. In fact, one of this channel's most recent uploads was about Qui-Gon, a normal survival horror game that had the catch of also being a point and click. Unfortunately, I thought the actual pointing and clicking was underutilized in that game, but I still respected it for doing something that stood out, and I still thought it was such a fun time that I bought it twice. Lifeline, Sony Japan's voice-controlled survival horror for PlayStation 2 on the other hand, handles things a bit differently. This game is primarily controlled by its gimmick. You hardly ever have to touch the controller. And in honor of doing another video on a spooky game for Halloween this year, I decided I would finally play through this one as I've had my eye on it for a while. For all the reviews and videos of people talking about this game that I've seen, opinions seem pretty split on Lifeline. Even when it was released, it had a pretty mixed reception by critics. And that's not too shocking. A game with the novelty of being voice controlled is gonna be polarizing no matter how unique of a concept it is. But on this channel, I like to take a look at games and judge them for myself. I'm a big fan of some that a lot of people may dislike, and vice versa. And you know what, screw it, I'll just say this in advance. I am a fan of this game. What presents itself as a typical survival horror with the quirk of being voice controlled actually turned out to be one of my favorite gaming experiences. This game had me thinking about it constantly whenever I put it down. I don't want to put it down though. I want to talk about it some more.
Our nation's economy will rebound from this, our first space station developed entirely on our own. This is an achievement made possible only through the united efforts of the public and private sectors.
The game starts with you, the rarely seen protagonist, attending a Christmas party in 2029 with your girlfriend Naomi. Not just any Christmas party though. This is a Christmas party in a space station hotel that's attended by all of the super elite, including Japan's Prime Minister, Takayama. Of course, things go wrong when the monsters start attacking though. You should have expected that. So you end up separated from Naomi after passing out and mysteriously waking up in a monitor room that not only lets you see every nook and cranny of the space station, but also control most of it. That means for a majority of the game, this is where you spend your time. That girl right there, Rio, is not who you control at all. You just guide her through the ship, which is where the voice controls come into play. You stumble across Rio when you get a distress call from the station's security room and see that she's been locked inside. You free her from the cell by remotely unlocking it, and after you two do a bit of bonding about how you already know each other from her serving you and Naomi at the party, you decide to team up in search of Naomi and someone/something that Rio is looking for herself. You'll figure it out as you play. Also, don't bother questioning it whenever Rio is facing and talking to a camera that's obviously not there. Alright, so before I go any further, I have to mention the elephant in the room. I did not play this game authentically. I emulated it through PCSX2, and I obviously didn't play it with any of the headsets that were designed for the PlayStation 2 either. The game did run flawlessly for me, but I think it's important to mention that because my experience, no matter how great it was, is never truly gonna be one-to-one with the original PlayStation 2 hardware experience. So whenever I talk about voice recognition in particular, I want you to take it all with a grain of salt, because I didn't play this game the way it was truly intended. And if you're just someone who gets upset over emulation in general, well then, I'm sorry. With that said, let's talk about the voice recognition.
You're too vague. I don't know what you mean.
By far, the number one thing that this game has been lambasted for is the voice recognition. I've read reviews and anecdotes from people who have actually played this game on the PlayStation 2 themselves, and they all have differing experiences. For some people it worked perfectly, for others it hardly ever seemed to work. Personally, I hardly had any issues having my voice recognized by this game, and just to cover my bases, I tried a different assortment of microphones as well. My XLR, my Blue Yeti, my ATR 2100X, my old crappy Turtle Beach headset, my old crappy webcam, and what do you know, all of it worked pretty damn well.
Bark like a dog.
Little dog? Arf! Arf! Or big dog? Woof! Woof!
That's not to say I didn't have any situations where Rio misunderstood me though. No, I would say the opposite in fact.
I can't go forward from here.
Red.
Yep.
Is she an idiot?
There were more than a few occasions where Rio asked me to repeat myself because I either wasn't specific enough or I didn't speak clearly enough. But Rio did understand me well enough most of the time, so it never really felt like the game itself was at fault. Before you even jump into the story, the game starts with a tutorial that teaches you the proper way to position the headset. It also gives you a few pointers to follow so you're understood clearly, and it also shows you how to control Rio. As I've already said, you just speak to her and she understands a lot. Just hold down the circle button to speak and Rio will listen to what you have to say. If you want her to inspect that wine bottle, she'll do it. If you want her to look under a guy's wig, she'll do that as well. She'll even shoot random things with her gun if you tell her to. You can really be as specific or as vague as you want, but you should elaborate a little because you'll just leave Rio confused otherwise. And if you don't know what something is, just point out its color or general shape or position and she'll help you out. You should also know that some patience is gonna be required while playing this game, mostly because if you want to be thorough, you're gonna have to speak to Rio to point out every little thing, but also because you can't interrupt Rio while she's speaking, and she talks a lot. You only ever use your controller for minor things like opening the map, or getting a look at keywords you can say, or inputting passwords, or unlocking doors that Rio can't. But everything else, save for the final boss fight, requires you to use your voice. On top of having to speak to guide Rio though, you can also just speak with her to shoot the shit, or even play mini games where you name as many states as you can without repeating them. You can learn more about Rio and get some more backstory about what's really going on in this spacecraft if you just take the time to say,
Consultation.
and repeat one of these phrases. It's because of all of that I found this game held my attention in a way that no other survival horror, or just any game in general, has either. See, it's one thing to just follow a plot and understand what's going on. It's another to become so engrossed in a story that you're paying attention to every single little detail down to the items in your inventory. But when you have the ability to have conversations with NPCs and joke around with them, it's engaging in this odd way that I've only experienced in two other games, Seaman and Facade. I will say the mixing isn't the best though. Sometimes her voice is too quiet and it's hard trying to make out what she's trying to say over the background. But just as the game becomes more amusing thanks to the voice controls, it also becomes 1,000 times more annoying, especially when it comes to the combat. You have to guide Rio through shooting and killing all of these monsters as well, and this is when you really have to suspend your disbelief a little bit. Obviously, Rio should be able to dispatch of these monsters herself without your guidance. She's actually out there holding the gun in her hand. But this is still a game and they want you to have some agency when it comes to fighting, so just try not to think about that fact. That said, the combat in this game is not great, but interesting. If you'll notice at the bottom of the screen, they give you a bunch of targets relating to each specific monster that you're fighting, and if you tell Rio to shoot at that specific body part, she will. There are weak points, just as there are points where you'll do no damage at all or temporarily make a part vulnerable. But you see, the thing that makes the combat so tense and even irritating to deal with at points isn't the fact that you have to find where best to shoot. It's the fact that the combat all still happens in real time. You have to act promptly before the enemies overwhelm you, and when they start to pile on, it's like, oh, hold on you guys, can we take a breather, please? You better believe it gets way worse towards the end of the game too, when the enemies start coming at you in bigger numbers with stronger variants. Let's just say deaths are very common in this game. Now, you are able to tell Rio to dodge or just run back a little to give herself some space, but you also have to be specific with those commands as well. Dodge left, dodge right, turn around, flee, recover. There's a lot more you have to stay on top of than just shoot this specific body part. Even reloading is a command you have to remember to tell Rio. The good news is she has infinite ammo, so the game doesn't have you scrambling and looking for that, but you will have to find and be careful with these health pickups. Also, the combat is where speaking clearly matters the most. There's nothing more annoying than telling Rio to dodge and then shoot an enemy in the brief window where they're vulnerable, only for her to not understand what you said and do something stupid like waste one of your healing items. I still do find the combat fun for what it is, but you know, just having to deal with the buffer between you speaking commands at Rio and her actually carrying out your actions isn't something I really want to deal with again. There's even a part of this game where you'll most likely need to grind enemies to find a certain item and progress, so have fun with that. And while not as eccentric as the combat, there is another element of the gameplay that I feel is worth mentioning, and that would be the puzzles. They're creative when it comes to what you have to say, or how you have to say it, like this one where you and Rio have to repeat a passage together. They're exact too. For example, there's a puzzle where you'll have to tell Rio some numbers so she can unlock a safe. But if you aren't specifically telling her to turn the dial left or right, then you'll fail. For the most part, they are fun puzzles. But the only puzzle that I finished this game truly disliking was this one in the staff room, where in order to enter this guy's locked room, you had to say what he was obsessed with. So inspecting the room, you see a bunch of boxes of candy lying around, so you would think that you should return to the lock and say candy. But that's not the right answer. Go back and take a closer look. All the boxes and jars say fruits candy, so maybe that's it, right? Well, no, that's a miss as well. I was stuck on this puzzle for about a minute, and I want to see if you guys can figure it out as well. The answer is right in front of your face. Everything you need is on the screen. Did you figure it out yet? Well, did you notice how there were strawberries on that PNG, but no red pieces? Yeah, this guy's obsessed with strawberry candy in particular. So you return to the door and say the password to be let in. But here's the thing, I didn't say strawberry candy. I didn't pick up on that being the answer at all. What I said instead was
jars of candy.
And I guess it was close enough to sounding like strawberry candy that I was let in. But yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of this one at all. As you would expect, this game is more silly than it is frightening. Unless you're frightened of suddenly being ambushed by monsters exactly like this, then there's never gonna be a moment where you're jumping out of your seat in fear. But there was one part that had me going, this is so cool, why don't they do more of this? You make your way to these restrooms where the lights are out, and Rio is reminded of a ghost story that claims that ghosts are haunting the bathrooms. So she tries to put on a brave face, but she's actually scared to venture forward, and you have to give her the courage to go on. And man, when I tell you she is frightened, I mean it. To the point where I literally thought she was gonna burst into tears or something.
I can't go any further here. Please. Can we stop looking here?
I won't say what else happens in this restroom because I think it should be a surprise for those of you who want to play this game. But yeah, this part is the only part of the game that actually felt like a horror. Still though, I do think there is some missed potential there. Like, could you imagine if there was a stalker that followed Rio throughout the game and you had to instruct her on where to hide and not speak too loudly into her headset or else the monster would find her? I think that could have been a fun way to play with the voice aspect of it all. Maybe it's better in theory than in practice, but when you already have a game this unique, I say get as inventive as you can. And on the topic of monsters, I'm kinda split on these guys. I appreciate the fact that they're not all humanoid creatures. I think that's a fun creative decision, and it also forces you to experiment with these creatures when you fight them, instead of just telling Rio to shoot the obvious weak point, being their head, over and over. But when it comes to their actual designs, I'm just kinda indifferent. They aren't bad, they just don't do anything for me. Especially not this thing, or these little guys who are just sea cucumbers. Also, your brain may have gone to thinking that these guys are aliens, but I was careful not to use that word because they aren't. They're actually animals who have been mutated by, and stick with me here, the Philosopher's Stone. I can't say too much without spoiling. Hell, I already did spoil part of the game by saying that, but not everything. It's been a while since I did this, but if you're interested in hearing more about this game's story, then hang around. I have a couple of thoughts on it that I'd like to talk about, but if you just want to hear the rest of my thoughts on this game, you can skip to the next chapter. Alright, so when we had left off, we just decided to team up with Rio, and while you're looking around the ship, you stumble into her boss and the manager of the hotel, Tanaka, a sleazy foul-mouthed man who barks at Rio and gives her the task of rescuing any survivors. He's a jerk, but I'd be a liar if I said he wasn't funny. His lines are pretty comical.
I'm trying to help, and you're being a real jerk.
Save it for someone who cares, bimbo.
She also runs into Alan, a researcher who gives Rio the bogus story of working on a new hypercarbon alloy. He gets suspiciously mad at Rio when she questions Alan's claim of these monsters being aliens. There's also Joe Powers, another researcher who tells Rio to get to the port where a rescue team is coming. And finally, the Prime Minister plus his companions, who make their way to the port where the rescue team arrives. Just in time, I might add. The rescue team wants to keep Rio and the other survivors in captivity, but she still has a couple of goals that she needs to fulfill, so she steals some equipment and sneaks out while the team is distracted. She finds exactly who she's looking for too, a reporter who's already dead when we come across them. But looking at the archival footage of the reporter's interview with Tanaka, Rio finds exactly what she's looking for in the background, the Philosopher's Stone. Rio admits she only took the waitress job on the station after watching that interview and spotting it. She wants to get a hold of it for some reason, and going a bit deeper into the game, we find out that the stone dates back to the 16th century philosopher Paracelsus, and it has unique healing powers. We also find out that Joe Powers, Alan, and the other researchers were actually working on recreating the Philosopher's Stone. And here's the crazy part, the man-made Philosopher's Stone actually works. But where the original stone healed, the artificial stone recreates, it mutates. So all those monsters we've been fighting the entire game, they weren't aliens at all, they're just mutated animals. The researchers themselves even go as far as calling anything healed by the artificial stone cursed. The biggest twist comes when we discover why this stone is so important to Rio though. It's because she's actually a descendant of Paracelsus, and it's a family heirloom that she feels it's her obligation to protect, lest it get into the wrong hands of someone like Joseph Kraft, a researcher who studied the stone with Rio's father and later shot both a young Rio and her parents to gain possession of it. Thankfully, Rio survived and she planned to move on with her life, but her interest was renewed when she saw that interview. To make things even worse, Rio discovers that the rescue team aren't the saviors everyone thinks they are. They've actually been hired by someone to tie up all loose ends, and it gets deadlier than the eclipse. After the rescue team fires on the Prime Minister and his wife, she crawls to the soldiers and curses them with her dying breath. And then she turns into this, a mutated being capable of defeating the soldiers with her mere voice. Now let's stop a second and take it back a bit, because there are a couple of things that I didn't mention. A bit earlier in the story, we came across another mutated human and had a boss fight with this guy, who turned out to be Tanaka himself. Also, throughout the game we're chased by this thing, who appears to be a mutated human as well. I'll give you one guess as to who it is. It's the same person you saw at the beginning of the game, and the same person Rio has yet to come across and rescue. Okay, now let's go back to where we were. So Rio has made her way to near where you are on the space station, but she's cornered by a mutated Naomi who wants to find out where you are. Naomi, in distress, nearly kills Rio, but we stop her by calling out to her, and then she passes on from just knowing that you're safe, I guess. And this would be a great place to stop the story, as Rio is just one corridor away from the monitor room where you're watching her. But of course, Joe Powers reveals himself to be Joseph Kraft, the same man who shot Rio all those years ago. And he does it again, except she doesn't die because she has the real Philosopher's Stone embedded inside of her. Joe Powers is pretty much the guy behind everything in this game. The monsters are a result of his work, and the reason why we're trapped in this room is because he locked us in here. So Rio does the right thing and shoots him in the back when he thinks she's dead. Except things obviously can't end there. After a boss battle with a mutated Joe Powers, you finally meet Rio and escape the station together. You guys are the only survivors. Lucky you. Okay, so the Philosopher's Stone, or should I say stones. I think there's a fair bit to read into with these things. In the middle of Joe Powers' evil villain monologue, he makes a brief mention of the fake stones being powered by accursed words, which actually does stand to reason when you remember that the two people we actually see mutated by the stone using foul language. Tanaka, for instance, had such a potty mouth that Rio called him out on it.
Sir?
What?
Do you kiss your mother with that mouth?
And the Prime Minister's wife cursed the fake rescue team to death with her dying words. I think that's such a cool idea for a game like Lifeline, which built itself on verbal communication to emphasize the power of words in the actual story like this. And I wish the story would have delved even deeper into it.
Why did Tanaka turn into a monster?
Please, listen carefully. Swearing or cursing on this station must be avoided. I think that you would be okay, but...
Naomi is the real tragedy here, because unlike the others, she never really spoke foul. But she was still transformed by Joe Powers. She may have killed a lot of people in the story, but she never actually meant to. Other than that, I really love this game's type of story, which is to say campy. I think the entire game is silly, but without taking the piss. The story itself takes itself very seriously, but you can't tell me that the people behind this game weren't laughing at themselves when they made it, or when they wrote the dialogue for some of these characters.
How dare you, you bloody whore! Bitch, you're dead! Gonna crush the life out of you! Not getting away! Not getting away with this!
I didn't really finish this game feeling disappointed at all, but it did leave me longing to know what happens after. Not saying a sequel is necessary, I think the story wraps up nicely, but they do sow the seeds for more to happen after you and Rio return to Earth. I just think a little epilogue after the fact would have been nice. If you really enjoy Lifeline, I think this game warrants a second playthrough, even if it's just so you can see what changes in those split-second decisions when Rio asks for your help in deciding something. It doesn't make a lick of difference in how the story ends, but you know, that's still more Lifeline to see. I also think you should replay this game so you can enjoy the post-game content. There's a decent bit of it here actually. The obvious and best reward being Rio's new outfit. Well, actually it's two outfits because she changes clothes halfway throughout the story, but I still thought they were both fine. Would have been nice if we had a sillier variant though. The other post-game content comes in the form of mini-games that you actually unlock by finding these little chips throughout the story. They aren't too hard to find if you're thorough. I got all 16 of them on my first playthrough. There's one where you have to unscramble words and repeat them, another one where you have to complete common phrases, another where you have to solve math problems, and the categories game. Categories you can actually play in the main story with Rio. It's the one where you have to name states, remember? But it can also be other stuff like US presidents, but I guess it's here too. It's very easy to waste time on this one. That's still not where the bonus content ends though, because there's also this, the Lifeline demo for a scrapped PC version of the game. When this game was being developed, they actually made a little PC game where you could talk to Rio. I had to change my computer's date to 2003 to actually make it run, but it still works. The commands in this demo are pretty basic, it's mostly stuff you can ask her in the consultations as well, but there are a few questions here that I don't remember being in the full game.
Why are you so cranky?
I get told that a lot. I'm sorry. But you won't ever hear me badmouth someone or use profanity.
So if you're a creep and want to learn more about Rio, well, knock yourself out. You can find and download this on the Internet Archive, by the way. I'll link it below. Anyways, that was Lifeline, a completely unique, one-of-a-kind survival horror that I believe deserves more love than it ever got. I'll repeat this again though, I did not play this game as it was intended. That's not a brag or anything, just a matter of fact that I feel is necessary to mention. I didn't judge this game on the same grounds that it was judged on in 2004, but I still enjoyed my time with it. And you know what? I want more. Not necessarily more Rio or more of this story in particular, but another game with this premise of being a voice-controlled survival horror. I still think there's potential for this type of game to evolve. It would still be gimmicky, sure, but fun. I also think there's a lesson that all creative types can learn from Lifeline, which is not to be afraid to innovate or try something unusual. It might not pan out so well critically, but if you have an idea that you think could be fun, or if you want to challenge the conventions of something that we've all grown used to, then do it. Even if it takes you 20 years to find your audience, or even if you never do, I think it's still important to indulge those urges. I promise you that you'll feel better after the fact.
Listen, can you help me out as an operator? In return, I'll find your Naomi along the way. You can call me Rio.
There was an explosion, then those monsters appeared all over. God knows what in the hell they are. It's scientifically irrational that test animals grow to such extreme sizes.
This is awful.
Hey, I'm thinking once we reopen the hotel, we can advertise it as the first place humans fought off an alien invasion.
Operator, that voice, it had to be Naomi. She's calling for help somewhere. Hurry, we've got to find her.
The daughter of such a brilliant man. I'm amazed at how stupid you are.
Mother of...
Launch yourself. I really am grateful. I can't, operator. If it weren't for you, I'd be dead. And you know what's funny? I don't even know your name.
I can't believe we're spending Christmas in space. Thank you.